Malaysian 370, contact Ho Chi Minh 120.9. Good night.
We have breaking news. Malaysia Airlines confirms it has lost contact with a plane carrying 227 passengers.
It's a question that has haunted families, investigators, and the world for over a decade.
It's been 11 years since the disappearance of flight MH370. But one company is so sure they can find the wreckage, they put $70 million on the line.
What happened to Malaysia Airlines Flight 370? Vanishing from radar screens on March 8, 2014, with 239 souls on board, the Boeing 777 seemingly dissolved into thin air, triggering the most extensive and expensive search in aviation history, yet yielding no definitive answers. But now, as we navigate through 2025, a potent mix of cutting-edge analysis determine private enterprise and advanced technology is converging. Could this be the year? Could 2025 finally be when the world's greatest aviation mystery gives up its secrets? The possibility, however speculative, is electrifying. To truly grasp why the prospect of finding MH370 in 2025 feels so significant, we need to remember the sheer scale of the void it left behind. It's been more than 11 years since that fateful night. Flight 370, a Boeing 777-200ER, took off from Kuala Lumpur International Airport just after midnight, bound for Beijing. On board were 227 passengers, a diverse group, most from China and Malaysia, but also individuals from a dozen other nations, and 12 Malaysian crew members. Everything seemed routine for the first hour. The plane reached cruising altitude, pilots exchanged standard radio calls. Then, at 1:19 a.m. local time, came the final, chillingly normal, verbal sign-off from the cockpit. Good night, Malaysian 370.
Good night, Malaysian 370.
Moments later, the aircraft's transponder, which communicates its identity and position to ground control, went silent as it crossed from Malaysian into Vietnamese airspace over the South China Sea. Shortly after, military radar tracked the plane deviating sharply from its planned northeast path, turning west, back across the Malay Peninsula, and then heading northwest up the Strait of Malacca. The last primary radar contact placed it over the Andaman Sea at 2:22 a.m. After that, silence. Utter, baffling silence from a modern airliner packed with communication systems. What followed was an unprecedented international search effort. Initially focused on the South China Sea and Strait of Malacca, the search perimeter exploded outwards when analysis of automated satellite communications, faint electronic handshakes between the plane and an Inmarsat satellite, indicated the aircraft likely continued flying for several more hours. These pings suggested two possible corridors, one stretching north towards Central Asia, the other arcing deep into the desolate southern Indian Ocean. The northern route was eventually discounted, the southern became the focus. The 2025 question, why renewed hope? So after 11 years of dead ends and fading headlines, why are we even talking about 2025 as a potentially pivotal year for MH370? What fuels this resurgence of hope, this cautious optimism that answers might finally be within reach? It's not based on a single breakthrough, but rather a confluence of factors that have gained momentum recently, making a targeted, effective search more plausible now than perhaps at any point since the early days. The most significant driver is the potential resumption of the physical search by the American marine robotics company Ocean Infinity. They conducted a private search in 2018, and crucially, they've repeatedly stated their willingness to go back, armed with new analysis and improved technology under their famous no-find, no-fee proposal. This offer removes a major financial barrier for the Malaysian government, making approval politically and economically more feasible. Throughout late 2024 and into early 2025, there were positive signals. Malaysia agreed in principle in December 2024, and by March 2025, the Malaysian cabinet reportedly approved the terms for a new $70 million deal contingent on success. While official confirmation and the signing were pending and the search itself faced an initial suspension due to weather, the framework for action is seemingly in place. Ocean Infinity even commenced some preliminary search activities in February 2025, focusing on filling data gaps from previous searches, demonstrating their readiness. The intent and the capability are there, waiting for the final green light in the right weather window, potentially later in 2025 or early 2026. Beyond the physical search plans, key anniversaries often act as catalysts. The 10th anniversary in March 2024 saw renewed media attention and poignant pleas from families, reminding the world of the unresolved tragedy and increasing pressure on authorities to act. Anniversaries keep the story alive and can refocus political will. While 2025 isn't a major milestone year in the same way, the momentum generated in 2024 seems to be carrying forward, creating a window of opportunity. Ocean Infinity's renewed push central to the renewed optimism surrounding MH370 in 2025 is the role of Ocean Infinity. This isn't just any marine exploration company. They are specialists in deep-sea surveying and recovery, equipped with some of the most advanced technology on the planet, and they have unfinished business with MH370. Their previous involvement and their persistent offer to return make them the key player in any potential breakthrough. Let's rewind briefly to 2018. Following the suspension of the official government-led search, Ocean Infinity stepped in. They chartered the vessel Seabed Constructor and deployed a fleet of autonomous underwater vehicles, AUVs, essentially sophisticated, untethered robotic submarines to scour the seabed. Operating on their now famous no-find, no-fee basis, they spent over 3 months searching an area exceeding 112,000 square kilometers, primarily just north of the original search zone. Despite this massive effort, which covered an area almost equivalent to the previous 2.5-year government search, they too came up empty-handed. However, failure didn't deter them. Ocean Infinity has consistently maintained its interest in resuming the hunt, driven partly by the challenge and partly by the potential $70 million reward offered by Malaysia under the no-find, no-fee agreement if they succeed. Their renewed proposal, formally presented to the Malaysian government around the 10th anniversary in March 2024, is built on updated analyses and incorporates lessons learned. The proposed new search area covers approximately 15,000 square kilometers, around 1,800 square miles. Importantly, this area isn't just a random guess. It's informed by the latest analytical work, including potential refinements from satellite data reviews and potentially incorporating insights from WSPR analysis and debris drift modeling. It seems focused around latitudes 33° to 36° along the 7th arc, potentially extending further out than previous searches and targeting zones with complex terrain where earlier surveys might have had gaps or lower data quality. The technology Ocean Infinity brings to the table is a game-changer. Instead of relying solely on towed sonar systems which are limited by vessel speed and maneuverability, they utilize fleets of AUVs. Models like the Huggins 6000 are designed for deep-water operations, rated up to 6,000 meters, and can operate autonomously for extended periods. Equipped with high-resolution sonar like synthetic aperture sonar (SAS), magnetometers, cameras, and other sensors, these AUVs can mow the lawn across the seabed at relatively low altitudes, capturing incredibly detailed imagery and data independent of the surface vessel's movement or weather conditions within limits. They operate in coordinated swarms, allowing vast areas to be covered far more efficiently than older methods. Since their 2018 search, Ocean Infinity has further refined its AUV technology and operational procedures, potentially incorporating advancements in data processing and perhaps even AI-assisted target recognition to analyze the terabytes of data collected more effectively. Their Armada fleet of robotic surface vessels could also play a role, offering potentially longer endurance and lower operational costs for deploying and managing AUVs. Decoding the signals, WSPR, and radio waves. While Ocean Infinity provides the muscle for a potential new search, a significant part of the renewed hope comes from innovative analytical techniques suggesting where that muscle should be applied. One of the most talked about and potentially game-changing methods involves something seemingly unrelated to aviation: amateur radio signals, specifically the Weak Signal Propagation Reporter, or WSPR, often pronounced WHISPER. What exactly is WSPR? Imagine a global network of ham radio enthusiasts constantly sending out very low-power, short-coded transmissions. These signals bounce off the ionosphere and travel vast distances around the globe, often thousands of kilometers. Other enthusiasts have receivers listening for these faint signals. The WSPR network automatically logs which transmitters are heard by which receivers, along with data about the signal's strength and frequency stability. It's essentially a worldwide web of invisible radio tripwires, primarily used by hobbyists to test propagation conditions. Enter Richard Godfrey, a retired British aerospace engineer who has dedicated years to analyzing the MH370 mystery. His groundbreaking idea, developed in collaboration with others like Dr. Hannes Koetze and Professor Simon Maskell, was this: could a large aircraft like a Boeing 777 disturb these faint radio signals as it flew through the path between a transmitter and receiver? The theory posits that the aircraft's metallic body and wake could cause slight, measurable fluctuations, anomalies, in the received signal strength or frequency drift. If you could identify multiple such anomalies across different WSPR links, transmitter-receiver pairs that occurred at the right times and sequence along a plausible flight path, you could potentially track the aircraft even after its transponder and other systems went dark. Godfrey and his collaborators painstakingly trawled through the massive WSPR-net database, which archives historical signal data, looking for such anomalies on March 8, 2014, that correlated with the estimated trajectory of MH370 after it's turned south over the Indian Ocean. They identified hundreds of potential disturbances across numerous WSPR links that seem to align with the plane's suspected path and speed. By plotting the locations where these disturbances likely occurred, based on the geometry of the transmitter receiver and the aircraft's estimated position, they reconstructed a potential flight path. Crucially, this WSPR-derived path extends beyond the last radar contact and continues deep into the southern Indian Ocean, broadly aligning with the southern corridor indicated by the Inmarsat satellite data. However, the WSPR analysis pinpoints a potential final location, a crash site that is remarkably specific. According to Godfrey's recent analyses, e.g. February 2024, September 2024, this location is centered around 29.1 degrees south latitude and 99.9 degrees east longitude. This point lies roughly 1,500 kilometers west of Perth, Australia, and significantly, it falls outside the primary areas covered by both the initial government-led search and Ocean Infinity's 2018 search, though potentially near the edges or within wider drift analysis zones. It sits slightly southeast of the 7th satellite arc, a detail consistent with some end-of-flight scenarios, rethinking the data, satellites, and simulations. Beyond the novel WSPR analysis, renewed hope also stems from a deeper, more refined understanding of the data we've had all along, specifically the communication signals between MH370 and the Inmarsat satellite network. These signals, often called pings or handshakes, are the bedrock upon which the southern Indian Ocean search area was originally defined. Even years later, extracting more subtle clues from this dataset remains a key focus for investigators. Let's quickly recap how this data works. Even after MH370's regular communication systems apparently stopped transmitting, the aircraft's satellite data unit, SDU, continued to automatically respond to hourly status requests initiated by an Inmarsat ground station via a geostationary satellite. There were also a couple of other automated transmissions. Two key pieces of information were derived from these exchanges. One, burst timing offset, BTO. This measures the time it took for the signal to travel from the ground station up to the satellite, down to the aircraft, back up to the satellite, and finally back to the ground station. Knowing the satellite's precise location, this round-trip time allowed analysts to calculate the distance between the aircraft and the satellite at the time of each ping. This generated a series of possible locations forming arcs on the Earth's surface, the famous ping arcs. The final, 7th arc, represents the last complete handshake received at 0011 UTC, 8:11 AM Malaysian time. 2. Burst frequency offset, BFO. This relates to the Doppler effect, the change in signal frequency due to the relative motion between the aircraft and the satellite. As the aircraft moved, the frequency of the signal it sent back was slightly shifted. Analyzing this shift provided clues about the aircraft's speed and direction relative to the satellite. The original analysis of BTO and BFO data, conducted primarily by Inmarsat and investigation teams like the Australian Transport Safety Bureau, ATSB, and the Defence Science and Technology Group, DSTG, was groundbreaking. It confidently placed the aircraft's final hours in the southern Indian Ocean along the 7th arc. However, the exact point along this vast arc remained uncertain, leading to the massive initial search areas. What's changed since then? Firstly, computational power and modeling techniques have advanced. Researchers can now run more complex and numerous simulations of possible flight paths, incorporating more refined models of aircraft performance, like fuel consumption rates under different scenarios, atmospheric conditions, and potential autopilot modes. These simulations test thousands, even millions, of potential trajectories against the known BTO and BFO values. Small refinements in how the BFO data is interpreted, perhaps accounting more accurately for satellite movement, aircraft dynamics near fuel exhaustion, or potential fluctuations in the SDU's oscillator frequency, might slightly adjust the calculated speed or track, subtly shifting the highest probability points along the 7th arc. Secondly, there's ongoing debate and reanalysis regarding the final moments. The data includes evidence of a partial incomplete handshake attempt around 0019 UTC shortly after the final full ping. The precise interpretation of this partial ping and another transmission logged around 0228 UTC, potentially related to the aircraft powering down, could influence calculations of the final descent, whether it was a controlled glide after fuel exhaustion, an uncontrolled high-speed dive, or something else. Different end-of-flight scenarios result in different impact locations relative to the 7th arc. For example, a prolonged glide could place the wreckage further out from the arc than a steep dive. Groups like the Independent Group, IG, of experts have continued to publish analyses refining these end-of-flight dynamics based on the satellite data. Whispers from the waves, the debris evidence. While satellite data and radio wave analysis point towards where MH370 might have ended its flight, another crucial piece of the puzzle comes from the tangible evidence that eventually washed ashore, confirmed pieces of the aircraft itself. These fragments, carried by ocean currents across vast distances, offer physical clues about the plane's fate and provide data for sophisticated modeling aimed at backtracking their journey to the crash site. The first major breakthrough came in July 2015, over a year after the disappearance, when a piece of aircraft wing component called a flaperon washed up on Réunion Island, east of Madagascar in the western Indian Ocean. Serial numbers and maintenance records confirmed it belonged to 9M the aircraft operating as MH370. This was the first concrete proof that the plane had indeed crashed, likely in the southern Indian Ocean, as the satellite data suggested. Since then, numerous other pieces of debris found scattered across the coastlines of Mozambique, South Africa, Madagascar, Mauritius, and Tanzania have been confirmed as definitely or highly likely originating from MH370. These include parts of the wing, cabin interior fragments, and sections of the tail. As of late 2023, reports indicated over 40 potential pieces had been found, though not all have been conclusively linked. What have we learned from these fragments? Forensic examination, particularly of the Réunion flaperon conducted by French authorities, yielded some insights. Analysis suggested the flaperon was likely retracted, not deployed for landing at the time of impact. Some studies of damage patterns on the flaperon and the other parts have been interpreted by investigators, like the ATSB, as potentially indicating a high-speed, uncontrolled impact with the water rather than a controlled ditching. However, interpretations can vary, and definitive conclusions about the exact end-of-flight scenario based solely on the limited debris remain elusive. A recent analysis, late 2022, of a piece possibly from the landing gear door found in Madagascar added another data point, though its precise origin and implications are still debated. Perhaps the most significant contribution of the debris finds is their use in oceanographic drift analysis. Knowing where and when confirmed debris pieces were found allows scientists like those at CSIRO, Australia's National Science Agency, and the University of Western Australia to run complex computer models. These models simulate how floating objects behave under the influence of ocean currents, winds, and wave action, considering factors like the object's shape and buoyancy, its leeway. By running these simulations backwards in time, researchers can estimate the probable origin points in the southern Indian Ocean from which the debris could have drifted to reach their discovery locations. The human factor, motives, and possibilities. Amidst the complex technical analyses of satellite data, radio waves, and ocean currents, the most sensitive and deeply unsettling aspect of the MH370 mystery remains the human factor. The official investigation report released by Malaysia in 2018 concluded that the plane's deviation from its flight path was likely due to manual inputs and unlawful interference, but stopped short of identifying who was responsible or why. While delving into speculation about motives is often unproductive and painful for the families, considering how different human actions could have influenced the aircraft's final location is relevant to defining the search parameters. One major point of divergence centers on the final phase of the flight. Was it an uncontrolled dive after fuel exhaustion, or was there some form of controlled glide or ditching attempt? If the aircraft ran out of fuel while on autopilot at high altitude, it would likely have entered a steep, high-speed descent, impacting the ocean relatively close to the point where the engines flamed out near the 7th arc. This scenario is supported by some interpretations of the debris damage suggesting high-speed impact. However, if someone was still actively controlling the aircraft after fuel exhaustion, they might have attempted a controlled ditching or extended glide. A Boeing 777, even without engine power, can glide a significant distance, potentially over 100 nautical miles from cruising altitude. A controlled glide scenario would imply the wreckage could be located considerably further away from the 7th arc compared to an uncontrolled descent. Some independent analyses, including theories involving pilot intervention, lean towards a controlled end of flight, which would significantly expand the potential search area outwards from the arc. This possibility necessitates considering wider search zones than might be indicated by autopilot-only simulations. The profile of the captain, Zahari Ahmad Shah, inevitably came under scrutiny. The 2018 report noted failings by air traffic control, but didn't assign blame to the flight crew. However, the earlier ATSB report from 2017 did mention that Zahari had flown a route on his home flight simulator 6 weeks prior that was initially similar to the diversion path MH370 took, ending in the southern Indian Ocean. Some analysts like Richard Godfrey have noted alignments between this simulator data and the flight path derived from WSPR analysis, suggesting a potential deliberate act following a planned route. Others argue the simulator data is inconclusive or could represent contingency planning. The key point for the search is that if the flight path was deliberately planned and executed, the endpoint might be more specific, potentially aligning with analyses like WSPR or the simulator data, rather than being a random point along the arc determined solely by fuel exhaustion. Questions about the cargo manifest have also arisen, particularly concerning a large shipment of lithium-ion batteries. While official investigations concluded the cargo was packed according to regulations and unlikely to be the primary cause, theories persist about whether a cargo fire could have incapacitated the crew or systems. A fire scenario might lead to different flight dynamics and potentially a different debris field signature compared to deliberate action or simple fuel exhaustion. Tools for the deep, tech making the impossible possible. A crucial element underpinning the renewed optimism for finding MH370 isn't just new theories about where it might be, but also significant advancements in the technology used to look for it. Searching the deep ocean floor, especially in remote and challenging environments like the southern Indian Ocean, is incredibly difficult. However, the tools available to companies like Ocean Infinity in 2025 are considerably more advanced than those used during the initial searches back in 2014-2017. One of the biggest leaps has been in autonomous underwater vehicle AUV technology. While AUVs were used in the earlier searches, today's models offer greater endurance, allowing them to stay submerged and survey for longer periods before needing recovery and recharging. This translates directly to covering more ground more efficiently. Their navigation systems, often using inertial navigation combined with acoustic positioning, are more precise, ensuring accurate mapping and preventing missed strips of seabed holidays in the data. The sensors carried by these AUVs have also seen dramatic improvements. High-resolution synthetic aperture sonar (SAS) is now more common. Unlike traditional side-scan sonar, SAS uses sophisticated signal processing to create much sharper, almost photo-like acoustic images of the seabed, capable of resolving objects just a few centimeters across, even from tens of meters away. This drastically increases the probability of detecting relatively small pieces of aircraft debris which might have been missed or misinterpreted by older sonar systems. Magnetometers, which detect variations in the Earth's magnetic field caused by ferrous metals, are also more sensitive, helping to flag potential man-made objects. High-definition cameras provide visual confirmation of sonar targets. Data processing and analysis have also advanced significantly. Modern survey AUVs collect immense volumes of data, terabytes per mission. Processing this flood of information quickly and accurately used to be a bottleneck. Today, increased processing power both on board the AUVs and on the support vessel, coupled with more sophisticated algorithms, allows for faster data turnaround. Perhaps most exciting is the growing role of artificial intelligence, AI, and machine learning. AI algorithms can be trained to automatically sift through sonar imagery, flagging potential targets of interest, anomalies that don't look natural, much faster and potentially more reliably than human operators staring at screens for hours on end. This doesn't replace human expertise but significantly speeds up the initial analysis, allowing experts to focus on the most promising contacts. Surface support systems have evolved too. Ocean Infinity's Armada fleet includes optionally crewed or uncrewed surface vessels designed specifically to deploy, monitor, and recover AUVs. These robotic ships can potentially operate for longer durations and with lower costs than traditional crewed survey vessels, further improving the economics and efficiency of large-scale deep-sea searches. Reality check: the immense challenge remains. While the convergence of new analyses, advanced technology, and renewed commitment from Ocean Infinity paints a hopeful picture for 2025, it's absolutely crucial to temper that optimism with a hefty dose of reality. Finding MH370 remains one of the most formidable underwater search challenges ever undertaken, and success is far from guaranteed, even with the best tools and theories. The primary obstacle remains the sheer, mind-boggling scale of the potential search area. Even the refined target zones based on WSPR or updated satellite analysis cover thousands of square kilometers. Ocean Infinity's proposed new search area, while focused, is still around 15,000 km². That's an enormous underwater landscape to meticulously scan. While modern AUVs are efficient, covering such an area thoroughly still takes considerable time and resources. Missing the wreckage by even a narrow margin means failure. Then there's the depth. The suspected crash zone lies in one of the deepest parts of the Indian Ocean, with average depths around 4,000 meters, 13,000 feet, and potentially reaching down to 6,000 meters, nearly 20,000 feet in places. Operating equipment under such crushing pressure is technically demanding. The extreme depth also means signals take longer to travel, and visibility for cameras is non-existent without powerful artificial lighting, limited to a small radius around the AUV. Compounding the depth challenge is the terrain. The seabed in this region is not a flat, sandy plain. It's a rugged, complex environment featuring underwater mountains, seamounts, ridges, canyons, and potentially vast fields of manganese nodules. This uneven topography can create shadow zones where sonar signals are blocked or scattered, potentially hiding wreckage. Navigating AUVs safely close to such complex terrain to get high-resolution data is difficult and increases the risk of equipment damage or loss. Filling in data holidays caused by terrain during previous searches is a specific goal of the potential new effort, highlighting how significant this challenge is. Time is another adversary. Over 11 years have passed since the crash. While the cold, low-oxygen conditions of the deep sea might slow decomposition, the wreckage will inevitably have been subject to corrosion currents, sediment accumulation, potentially burying smaller pieces, and biological activity. Locating a debris field that may be partially scattered, degraded, or camouflaged by marine growth becomes harder with each passing year. Furthermore, retrieving the crucial flight data recorders, the black boxes, and ensuring their data is still readable after more than a decade submerged at extreme depths presents another significant hurdle, though experts remain hopeful retrieval is possible.